OMG, do I have a story for you guys. Hold on. My nose might be running under my mask. Sometimes that happens. What do you guys think about my powder brow? It's been like a few days since I got it. This is not going to come out until after my powder brows video. And I'm going to blow my nose really quick. All right, I'm back. I don't have any makeup on besides my brows, but because I'm not supposed to be wearing makeup yet, but I think I look better when my glasses are off, so I'm gonna keep them off. So let me tell you guys a story. I don't know. At the end of this, I'm gonna have a little poll. Like, does this stuff only happen to me, or is this like normal things that happen to people all the time and like nobody talks about it? So I want the picture of the hair I did today to the hair that I did during this that just happened to correspond with this story. So I hope that I post them around the same time, but I'm off with everything lately. Like, I'm just totally off. So anyway, so my client comes in. Thankfully, I know her. And like, she's like totally chill and cool. And we hear like an aggressive knock on the door, like aggressive. And I was like, are you expecting anybody? And she was like, no. Are you? And I was like, no. Like, I thought like maybe it was like her sister or her mom or something. So she's like, no. So I'm like looking outside. I'm like, who is this? So I'm like, they'll eventually go away. Because sometimes people knock on the door and like, you eventually go away because like it's by appointment only. It says no soliciting. It says no loitering. It says if you want to schedule an appointment, this is how you do it. Like, whatever. So about 15 minutes go by and like another aggressive knock happens. And I'm like, what the heck? And I'm like, that first knock was aggressive, right? And she's like, yeah, no, it was like super aggressive. And I'm like, what the heck? And like, it's a glass like door. Like, so like the outside frame is whatever, and the inside it's like all glass, but I have a sheet over it, so you really can't see. And plus I have on the door the sticker that says like, if you want an appointment, no soliciting, all that stuff, like right smack where somebody's face would be. So we couldn't even tell if it was a guy or a girl. We had no idea. 45 minutes go by and the guy's still standing out there. The person is still standing out there. And then he's like walking like to the car. Now the parking lot's mine too. So like, get off my property. So now he's like by his car, leaning up against the back of his car. I had already taken a picture of his car and his license plate because I'm like, who is this person? Like, whatever. But like, I'm not answering. Like, the last thing I'd want to do, I feel like this ear sticks out so much. Now you're never going to not be able to see that. So I wanted to make sure, like, whatever. So like, I text my husband. I'm like, you know, there's a guy outside, whatever. He's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, we're safe. We're inside. The door's locked, like, whatever. So then I'm like, he's like aggressively knocking again, I think it was. And I was like, what is going on? Why is this guy not leaving? And it was like a full on hair appointment. So like, she was here for about 4 hours. And now it's like going into like an hour that she's here. And this guy's still here. And it's like, what is this guy doing? So I called Joey and I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, he's getting more aggressive with his knocks and like, he's not leaving and like, whatever. And like, I sent Joey the picture of like the car that's in the parking lot. And he's like, you should call the police. So I'm like, all right, like, whatever. Like, I hope I'm doing the story justice because I know like Nicole was here, like, and I feel like every time I was like, am I being dramatic? And she's like, no, like, you're not being dramatic. Like, this is like weird and scary. So then I'm like, maybe I should open up the window because there's like a window over here that's like a little higher up and it overlooks the my parking lot. And so I was like, maybe I'll open up the window and be like, hey, can I help you? And my husband's like, yeah, like, you can do it. Just don't open up the door, like, whatever. So then hang out my husband, and Nicole's like, don't open up the window. Just call the cops. And I'm like, all right. So we try to call the local police. We can't get in touch with them. So then I'm like, all right, I'll just call 911. So I get, like, the dispatcher. I'm like, I'm not really sure if this is an emergency, but I own a salon. It's just me and another person. I don't accept walk-ins. Now, at this time, I'm still highlighting her hair at this time. I never have done this before in my life. First of all, I've never called the police at work. And second of all, I've never been on the phone while doing somebody's hair. I've never even like answered a text message while I'm at work. And I certainly have never been on the phone with the cops while like this is happening. So anyway, so I'm talking to the dispatcher. I'm like, I run my business where the door is locked and this guy's not leaving and like he's loitering in my parking lot. Like, I don't really know what to do, whatever. He's like, all right, we're going to get you in touch with like the local police or the sheriff or something. So I'm like, all right. So he's like, all right, don't hang up, whatever. So he gets me in touch. He's like, all right, this is, you know, whatever. They get me in touch. The guy's like, the police officer or the sheriff, whoever it was like, all right. So I'm like, he's like, what's going on? So I tell him, I'm like, it's just me and another girl. We're young girls. Like, I'm scared. And he's like, no, totally understandable. We're going to come out there right now. Do you have his license plate number? So I'm like, yes, I do. Give me 2 seconds. Like, I like had to get my phone. And like, I was like, I have a picture of it. And like, I gave it to him. He's like, what is he wearing? I'm like, he basically looks like Jake from State Farm. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't say it, but I was thinking it. I'm like, he has a red long sleeve shirt on. He's probably like 40s to 50s, dark hair, white guy. And he's like up against his car. He's like drinking a coffee right now. And he's like, all right, we're on our way. So then, like, I'm like still doing her hair. The guy's still outside. I'm like, when are the police going to get here? Police finally get here. 3 cars come. 2 cops get out of the car. Then I hear a knock on the door. They're like talking to him. Then I hear a knock on the door. So I answer the door because I can clearly see it's the police officer. And I don't like open it all the way because it's like I'm still scared, like whatever. And he's like, did you call us? I'm like, yes, I did. He's like, all right, well, he's the fire inspector. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was like, I am actually like so relieved. I don't remember exactly what I said. Do you ever get when like stuff like this happens to you and it's like a haze? Like you can't even, it's like you see darkness, like you can't even like, you don't even know what you're saying. You don't even know what's going on. So anyway, so I'm like, I think I said like, oh, I'm relieved. I think I said I was sorry. And then the fire inspector was being so nasty to me. And he's like, you called the police, blah, blah. And I was like, what are you giving me an attitude for? And he's like, and the police officer was like sitting in between us. And he's like, looked at me, looked at the guy. And I was like, I didn't know who you were. And he had like a circle badge on him, like could have been a Boy Scout badge. Like, I don't even know. Could have got it from eBay. I have no idea. It wasn't a badge. It wasn't a badge. It was a patch. He had a patch on him. And I was supposed to see that through this. I was supposed to see it. He never once said fire inspector. He could have left his business card in the mailbox. He could have literally, you could hear it through the door. He could have said like, it's the fire inspector. I still would have been hesitant because like it's 2020 and like people are effing crazy. So like you really don't know like who's lying and who's buying patches off of Amazon. His car had nothing on it that would indicate that he's a fire inspector. He didn't have anything besides a circle patch right here that like didn't say like fire inspector. It was like fire inspector all the way around it. So anyway, so I literally was like, what are you giving me an attitude for? And he's like, well, you called the police. And I was like, yeah, because I didn't know what you were doing, like whatever. So then he's like, so then the police officer was like, all right, well, he's a fire inspector. Do you want to let him in? And I'm like, well, like, do I have to? He's like, well, yeah. So I was like, okay, fine. So he comes in and he's like, I'll just be 2 seconds. And as soon as the door shut behind him, he was like so nice. And he's like, I could have just left my car. And it's like, oh, really? Then why didn't you? Like, why were you harassing my place of business for a freaking hour until I had to call the cops and then giving me an attitude for calling the cops? Like, I want to be like, hey, if you had a daughter who had her own business and there was a guy who was aggressively banging on the door, never once saying who he is, and then hanging out, loitering in the parking lot for an hour, would you be like, no, don't call the cops? No, it's fine. It's probably the fire inspector. What? So he's like, I just have to, so before he came in, the cop was like, how long are you going to be? And he's like, I don't know, 2 minutes. And he's like, all right. So the cop's like waiting outside and he comes in and he's like taking pictures and like doing whatever he's got to do. And he's like, I could have just gave you the card. I'm like, okay. So then he's like, is it just you here? Because he saw my license in the back. He's like, is that your license? I'm like, yeah. He's like, is it only you here? I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, I knew you had somebody in here. And I'm like, yeah, well, COVID, I can only let one person in at a time. Like, unless you're immune to the disease, I don't really know. The virus, like, I don't know. Does it not apply to the fire, what the heck is his name? Inspector? Like, you saw somebody was in here. COVID rules. I don't have partitions in between everything. Like, I don't have the plastic dividers, so I do one person at a time. You saw somebody was in here. He said in front of the police, like, I saw you had somebody in here, and I had this patch on me. And it's like, all right, Boy Scout, like, give me a break. So anyway, long story short, he's like, all right, do you have a business card? I'm like, yeah. So like I gave him one. He's like, all right, I'm going to go to my car and get a business card. It's like, you've been dilly-dallying this whole time. You didn't prepare yourself with a business card at any point. At any point, you didn't do that. So then I'm like, all right, well, the door automatically locks when you leave, so you have to unlock it. He's like, yeah, okay. And he's like, he can't get out because he's not listening. He didn't unlock it. So anyway, he comes back. He gives me his card. I give him my card. And he's like, this is your email? I can email you? I'm like, yeah, it's fine, whatever. So he winds up leaving, and then like I open up the door, and they're like all BSing now, like all the cops and like this guy, like for about another half hour in my parking lot. And I open up the door. I'm like, thank you, like to the police officers. And they're like, you know, whatever, probably thinking that I'm loony. But like when I said he's wearing a red shirt, they could have been like, could be the fire inspector. Take your chances, let him in. Could maybe not be the fire inspector. He never once said who he was. So anyway, I called my husband and I text my husband. I'm like, it was a fire inspector. Like, was I wrong? He's like going nuts. He's like, you are not wrong. He like called me to be like, you are not wrong. And the guy could have said who he was, whatever, whatever. My client who was here was like, you were not wrong. He didn't say who he was. I was scared. I was scared. And it's like, what is going on? So anyway, long story short, does this happen to anybody else? Have you ever had a fire inspector wait outside your place of business for an hour, aggressively bang at the door and never once say who he is? Is this just me? Or do I get punked? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I'm getting punked, but that's my story. I wish I said more. I wish I said like, do you have a daughter? Like, how would you feel if she was in my position, or if she was in a salon that was just her and another person? Like, you can't fault me. If it was anybody but the fire inspector, I would have been 100% right. And he probably would have been arrested. But because it was the fire inspector, how am I supposed to know that? Like, give me a break. So anyway, that's the story. I thought I'd share it. Let me know what you guys think. I know you guys like my stories, and it's so convenient that I always have them. But, and I'm not exaggerating this. I asked my client, I was like, am I exaggerating? And she's like, no, like this legit happened. So anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. Love you. Bye.